Palestine and to the visitation in Palestine in this regard. And we will be, of course, emphasizing on the American citizens. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, we had intended today to discuss challenges facing the Muslims in the new America, but we decided to put this until next Sunday, inshallah, because we had a session on the visit to Almasjid AlAqsa in Ramadan on Friday, but we did not get to the point of having it on record, recorded, or broadcasted. So I thought it'd be a good idea to have this session broadcast live and also recorded for those brothers and sisters who plan a visit to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa this summer, not just in this community and beyond. So that's why, I would advise the brothers and sisters who ever seen this video to send it to your friends and your relatives and this and that, because we have, alhamdulillah, thousands of Muslims from Europe coming to Masjid Al-Aqsa every year for visit. And we have thousands from South Africa who go to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa to visit every year. But when it comes to the United States, we only have hundreds. Although the number of Muslims here is substantial compared, with other countries in this regard. Now, why we do encourage the Muslims to visit Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and of course, visit Palestine. I know after the Friday session and before, even on discussion among groups, WhatsApp groups, isn't it the policy to discourage Muslims to go to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa? And I have made it clear that they are mixing two issues. We do discourage Muslims from Muslim countries to go to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa for a visit or to go to Palestine because it's part of the Zionist policy to try to normalize the relationship with the Muslim world. So, for example, some Muslim countries like Bangladesh says this passport is not good to travel to Israel. It says on the passport. So yeah, scholars have discouraged, the tendency in some countries to push for people to go and normalize. And alhamdulillah, the bulk of the Muslims in those countries are refusing to go in this regard because it looks, it would look like as if there is this warm relation and normal relation with the Zionists in Palestine. However, Muslims in the West are different. We need to bring this issue to the attention of the Muslims here for many reasons. One is to attach us to the Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and its surrounding, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He put barakah in its surrounding, and we'll discuss this briefly. Secondly, the issue of identity. We have been, as Muslims, facing challenges, especially with the next generation, on their identity as Muslims. And the demonstrations at the universities have really shown that many of those young Muslims and even many of the non-Muslims have sympathized with the issue of Gaza. So we need to build on it, encouraging them, for example, to go to Umrah, but at the same time encouraging them to go to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. so that this will be in their thinking, in their wijdan, because when they go and see what's going on and they come with a different attitude. They come and see that there's a cause, that we need to push this cause to the Muslims and the non-Muslims in this country. So it's very important to recognize the difference between telling the Muslims and Muslim countries not to go, especially those that have so-called peace treaties or Abrahamic agreements or what have you. Yes, those should be discouraged, and that's what the fatwa is directed for. But the Muslims coming from South Africa and from Britain, from France, and their children, I mean, the imams in Al-Masjid AlAqsa welcome them and meet with them and greet them. And they thank them for coming to Al-Masjid AlAqsa, because they go through some tremendous difficulty that we're going to explain some of it sometimes. So that distinction need to be clear. That distinction need to be clear. What we are talking about, encouraging the Muslims in the US, the Muslims in Europe, the Muslims in Australia, to really make this issue of Palestine and Masjid AlAqsa an integral part of their wijdan, their thinking, their intrinsic feelings and ideas in this regard. So this is not a cause only for people or Muslims from South Africa or Muslims in Britain and France. For example, in Britain, there are so many travel agencies that organize trips to Palestine on a regular basis. So many of them. In the US, as far as I know, there's one only that they do have trips to Al-Masjid AlAqsa organized in this regard. And the Europeans, and you go to any, just take any day and go to Al-Masjid AlAqsa, you will see Muslims from Europe and from South Africa in Al-Masjid AlAqsa. Used to be also seeing Muslims from Turkey, but after the relationship got where it got, they still try to come, but they are giving the Turkish Muslims really difficulty beyond what they give others since the war of October 7. Saying this, why Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa? First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have blessed this masjid and its surrounding and honor it with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam going there. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا. Glory to Allah who took his journey, his servant, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, on a journey, night journey, from Al-Masjid Al-Haram in Mecca to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Now, there was no building at the time. So what the Quran is talking about, an area. There's an area that's called Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. I know that the bulk of us call Al-Masjid Al-Qibli, Qibli, the masjid toward the Qibla, because there are a few masajid on the premises. We'll talk about this, inshallah, a little later on. But Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa is an area. It's about 700 meters by about 350 to 400 meters, depends on the width of each direction. All of this is called Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. And it's surrounded by a wall. This wall is either part of the wall of the old Jerusalem city, which Sulaiman al-Magnificent, Sulaiman al-Qanuni have built during the time of the Ottomans. And the two other sides have many schools and many features, structures. There are people who are still living there. There's a girls' school, and that's still operative. You could see the children coming of that. So that's Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. It's not the building in this regard. And it's important. This is an important aspect, because when those extreme Zionists, they want to build on Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, they're not just talking about a building. Some of them said they want to destroy this building and build another building. They're talking about the whole thing. Not just, some of them, of Of course, talk about the whole Palestine. They want the whole thing and kick the people out. I mean, Smotrich and Benagfer and Kuma, they do not, hide that agenda. But the danger on the Masjid al-Aqsa is real, and it's becoming real day after day, as we have seen with many settlers invading the Masjid al-Aqsa with politicians on their head, heading those attempts. So again, this is Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. This is the area that is there. Now, the honor is not just came in the Quran with this crystal clear verse that says, الَّذِي بَارَكْنَا حَوْلَهُ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a blessing around Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. So if the area around the Masjid al-Aqsa is blessed, what about the Masjid al-Aqsa itself? I mean, imagine yourself going to visit a place where Prophet Muhammad ﷺ stepped his foot there, where Sayyidina Umar put his foot there. I mean, there's still this masjid called Masjid Umar inside the Masjid al-Qibli, which people call Masjid al-Aqsa. That Sayyidina Umar stepped on that part of the land. Sayyidina Abu Ubaidah, Amr ibn al-Jarrah was there. Sharhabil ibn Hasna was there, and so on and so forth. Radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. Going back, prophet after prophet came to this place. Sayyidina Dawood stepped there. Sayyidina Sulaiman stepped there. Other prophets, this is the land of the prophets. You just go to Hebron, and we'll talk about Hebron, where the graves of many of the prophets are in Hebron, in what's called Al-Haram Al-Ibrahimi. And of course, it's not a haram. It does not have the sacredness in terms of the area, but that's what's called. So it's better to call it Al-Masjid Al-Ibrahimi in this regard, which now part masjid, part synagogue, that we'll talk about when you visited. So basically, when it comes to Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, do visit the 3 masajid, that only travel for ibadah can go to 3 masajid. Al-Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, Masjid al-Rasul Medina, and Al-Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. And the hadith sahih in this regard, that the religious trips that you have for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you aimed in 3 places to get the highest reward. And each one of those masjid have a salah multiplied. In Masjid al-Aqsa, it's 500 times. Each salah counts for 500 times. Salah in Masjid al-Rasul count for 1,000, and salah in Al-Masjid al-Haram in Mecca count for 100,000 in this regard. Now, beside this, the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, go and visit Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. If you cannot go, send oil that would light the premises of Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. And inshallah, when Allah give all of you the opportunity to go and visit Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, there is the structure which is called Al-Qibli, that you know as Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. There's another masjid under it. So there are 2 floors. There's the big floor up, and then there is something inside or under it. You take stairs to go to it. If you continue going to this masjid in the like a basement all the way until the end, you're gonna find a huge well. Imagine this huge well was dug inside the masjid. Now what is this well for? Because Muslims used to obey the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you cannot go to Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, they will gather oil, depends on how much money they can afford, and give it to the caravan that's going to visit. And say, this is oil is for Masjid al-Aqsa. So they dump it in that well. And throughout the year, at night, they take oil and they light all the candles around Masjid al-Aqsa, and there were thousands of them. Because Masjid al-Aqsa was a base for many of the scholars. I mean, the most famous among them is Imam Ghazali, who stayed there for 10 years. And when you read the books about the Masjid al-Aqsa, they will say that there were hundreds of halaqas go on at the same time. There are so many of the scholars that were there. Now, al-i'tikaf is very special because Muslims, scholars have agreed among themselves that the i'tikaf is, sunnah in the three masajid, Mecca, Medina, and Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Some of the scholars said it can be in any masjid. Others said no. I'm not discouraging people to have i'tikaf in masajid. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept. I'm just telling you the fiqhi perspective. So the Imam made it a point in Masjid Al-Aqsa this year to say, you already came, all of you, for i'tikaf in Masjid Al-Aqsa. You got out of the dispute among the scholars because everyone agree that i'tikaf either in Mecca, Medina, or in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. From that perspective. Of course, the electricity is being used at Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, so there's no oil that is needed at this moment. But just tells you, I mean, as I said, it's a huge well. It just tells you that people will send lots of oil to light those candles in this regard. And there are other ahadith on the virtues and statements on the virtues of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. I'll just mention one extra one and then move on. Among the things that you will see in Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa around the year is people wearing ihram. I mean, what's interesting is that those people are not from Palestine. Those people are mostly from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. They come and they are making ihram from Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa to go to do Umrah or to go to Hajj. Because there's a hadith, narrated, it goes back to Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, talk about the virtues of making ihram from Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. So you will see this frequent scene. I mean, for me, years back, when I saw people wearing ihram at Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, I mean, that was puzzling to me. So I approached them and said, brother, what are you doing? You are going for Umrah or for Hajj, and this is still a journey in front of you, and it's a hardship because basically, if it is cold, you're gonna wear those two pieces, and Palestine is not like Arabia in terms of the weather. It can be 110 in Mecca and Medina, and it will be like 45, 50 in Jerusalem. Say, brother, the virtue of making ihram from here. So I digged for it, and subhanallah, yeah, it's there. That the making Umrah or Hajj from Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Again, this is an issue by itself. I just wanted to bring this because to address the issue of why we keep talking about this issue and encouraging the Muslims in the US to go and visit Palestine and Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, and how it will enhance the Islamic identity of our children and our grandchildren by making them attached. And subhanallah, you could see clearly people who went there, especially the young, they become attached. We'd like to go back. We would like to go back in this regard. They also become more aware of the issue of Palestine and the history, and they come back messengers to the rest of the country and here, Muslims and non-Muslims, about what is going on there. Because the moment that you step in that land, you could see all sorts of oppression. I mean, you do not miss it. It's all over there. And I'll talk about some of it there, not to discourage people from going, but to be aware what to expect. Because we cannot just deceive the people, say everything is fancy, just go, mashallah, nice vacation. It's not. It's not. But the taste of the ibadah, I mean, going to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, you can smell history in every corner of that masjid, in every corner of Al-Masjid al-Marwani, or the Dome of the Rock, or Masjid al-Buraq. I'll talk a little about them after. All of them are on the same premises. And you can, take a journey around and you see from the Masjid al-Aqsa or in the Dome of the Rock, all those writings. Says this is what took place during the time of Al-Nasir al-Sultan Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. Or this is the time, or this was done during the time of this area or era of the Mamalik. Or this thing was done or renewed during the time of Sultan Solomon the Magnificent, or so on and so forth. So you can really see the Islamic history inscribed in many places. So this, thing was built during the time of the Fatimiyyin in Egypt. This place was built during the time of this and in this regard. Now, of course, it was the Umayyad who built Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, the building, and the Dome of the Rock. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan started building, and then he passed away, and his son Al-Walid became the Khalifa. He completed the Masjid Al-Aqsa, and he built the Dome of the Rock. So this was really early, in the early days of Islam, and a hefty amount of money was put for those buildings. It says that the kharaj, what came out of Egypt from wealth, for 7 years was put to build Qubbat Sakhra. At one point, it was one of the 7 wonders of the world. Now the question is why? Why did the Muslim early on do this in this regard? Because when Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu came to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, they cleaned the area, him and the Sahaba, and he built a small masjid. It's still called Masjid Umar, and it's inside Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. It's when you enter it, it's on the corner on your left. And you will understand why they built those 2 magnificent buildings at the early days of Islam when you visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So Jerusalem, as you know, was under the Roman rule. And the Romans have accepted Christianity, Constantine, as the religion of the state, and they started persecuting people who are not, following their way, including the Orthodox Church that did not, go with them. So the Patriarch of Jerusalem, when the Muslims came, he said, I'm willing to give you the city without war. No fighting, no blood. Just get me your Khalifa to come here. And the Sahaba sent for Sayyidina Umar to come, and he came, radiallahu anhu. And there's a mountain cross from Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. When you are facing, the front, look at the Qibla in the south, the Qibla there south, you will see a mountain there. It's called Jabal Al-Mukabbir. Jabal Al-Mukabbir. The mount of, takbir in that sense, so they call it Al-Mukabbir. And they said, why? Because they said when Sayyidina Umar arrived at that mountain coming from, Medina, he saw the Masjid Al-Aqsa, and he stood and he started making takbir. So it's still until today Jabal Al-Mukabbir. So there's like a town, people live there, and if you said, oh, I want to go there, Jabal Al-Mukabbir is in that direction. You take a bus or you take a taxi to Jabal Al-Mukabbir. So when the Umayyad saw the magnificent building, huge, of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, Kanisat al-Qiyamah, they wanted to show that there is a new civilization that is taking the place of the former Roman Empire. So it was on that basis that they thought, start thinking something big. Not, as I said, Sayyidina Umar built a small masjid in there, but they wanted to really start not just looking at one aspect of civilization, which is, for example, knowledge and spreading knowledge, spreading the language of the Quran, spreading the Quran and this. No, they thought that this would be a magnificent architecture that will open doors for Islamic architecture around the Muslim world. And for those who visited Spain and saw the architecture, that you could link it, to the architecture that was early on during the time of the Umayyad. So that's basically, in a nutshell, some of the things that I wanted to mention about Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and the virtues of it and the encouragement for visiting it. And even if you cannot go, there is to send some gift to it. In this regard, there's a place inside the masjid where they do have, you will see people coming, going, and putting donation for Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa in this regard. Now, to go to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, we are talking only about US citizens in this regard. This will apply to, of course, Canadian citizens and British citizens and French citizens in this regard. It does not apply to people who have green cards. Because if you have a green card, you would need to go to the embassy in Washington, D.C. and try to get a visa. But if you are a U.S. citizen, regardless if you are born here or born somewhere else, you can get the visa at the airport. Some of you have visited Egypt, or you can talk about Turkey or Jordan or Morocco. You will get a visa at the airport. You do not need to apply for a visa. But if you are visiting Pakistan, you need the visa. If you are visiting Saudi, you need the visa. If you are visiting Russia, you need the visa. If you are visiting China, you need a visa. So the U.S. citizens, there are certain countries you cannot just make a reservation and go. You would need a visa for some of those countries that I mentioned: Pakistan, Saudi, Russia, and China, etc. But when it comes to Palestine, you really do not need a visa. You can make a reservation and leave tomorrow. However, there was a change that took place this January, which is you need to apply for something called ETA. It's like an electronic permission to board the flight to Tel Aviv. So basically, it costs like $7, and usually they respond to you in few minutes, saying basically you are allowed for the next 2 years. Now they will tell you this is not a guarantee that we will let you in, but you need this to board the flight. Now, somebody may say, do they always ask for it? No. For example, when my wife went, they asked her, what's your ETA? The airline. When I went, nobody asked for ETA. And even in London, when I was, get aboard the flight, I said, I have the ETA. They said, show it to them at the airport there in Tel Aviv. They did not even ask about it. But again, this thing started January of this year. And it's not specific only to go to Palestine. Now, Britain require an ETA, even if you're going to go transit. Notice this, even if you're going to go transit through London, you need an ETA. European Union, you will need that ETA for European Union. It's one ETA for all those countries, but it will start next year. I'm not sure if they're going to do it for the transit or not, but the British really, it's crazy that even if you're just passing through the airport for an hour and a half, you have to have an ETA. And as I said, in general, you will get your ETA in a few minutes, maximum maybe 10 minutes. Unless there's an issue, it may be delayed in this regard. Again, this ETA is just to board the flight to Tel Aviv. Has nothing to do with are you allowed in or not. Now, to go to Palestine, you either fly to Tel Aviv or to fly to Amman, Amman, Jordan. So those are the two options that you have, fly to Tel Aviv or fly to Amman, Jordan, as a US citizen in this regard. If you fly to Tel Aviv, you can go directly from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. No issue. Just get out of the airport if you do not have an issue, and you can go directly. There's no military checkpoint between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. You can either take the train, which costs $3, $3.50. The train is in the airport and will get you to Jerusalem, Jaffa Street. When you get to Jaffa Street, you either go to another station that take you close to Bab al-Amud, Damascus Gate, or you can take a taxi and ask the taxi to drop you in Bab al-Amud, Damascus Gate, or Bab al-Khalil, Jaffa Gate, Hebron Gate. So the Bab al-Amud, of course, if you are not familiar with this, the Kaaba, the corners of the Kaaba are named after which country they face. So you have Rukn al-Yamani, because it's facing Yemen. Rukn al-Iraqi, it faces, Iraq and so on and so forth. So in Jerusalem, the doors or the gates to the old city, we are not talking about the gates now to Al-Masjid AlAqsa. We are talking about the gates to the old city. So there is Damascus Gate that faces Damascus in the north. There is Hebron Gate, which faces Al-Khalil. It's, if you search on the internet, they call it Jaffa Gate, because again, it faces Jaffa and faces the, it faces Jaffa Street in this regard. Because Jaffa is in the north, Hebron, Al-Khalil is in the south, in this regard. Either way, you will be getting or closer to, to the gates of the old city. The trains do not run at night. So if you arrive, sometimes after like 10 p.m. and all the way until, I think, 6 or 7 a.m., at least these days, there's no train. So you do not have that choice. Sometimes there are vans that take 10 people. It used to be frequent, where basically just get out and 10 people fill a van and goes to drop you in Damascus Gate. But now, after the war, there are not many tourists. It's really coming to really a zilch. I asked a taxi driver in Jerusalem, I said, how much of your business have been affected since the war? He said 99%. He said, I barely, have 1 or 2 tourists a day, because before that, you really find it difficult to have someone who knows the places and take you around and this and that, and you go to the old city and it's always crowded. Now it's empty. And I mean it when I say empty. The streets are, if you excluded Friday, and if you excluded Ramadan, during the evening, even during the day, there's not much traffic in there. So that's why those vans that carry 10 people and charge you $25, $30, it's not an option these days. The third option, of course, is to take a private taxi, and that's $100, just flat. $100 flat. You go by yourself, they will drop you at the Damascus gate. And again, there is no interruption. Nobody gonna stop you. No military checkpoint in this regard, regardless which way you go. Now, if you go through Jordan, Amman, you have to cross the bridge. There's a bridge between the West Bank and the East Bank. The East Bank, which is now called Jordan, and the West Bank, which is part of Palestine. They call it now the Palestinian territory. You enter, but then you have to go to Jerusalem. And you cannot go to Jerusalem unless you pass through one or more military checkpoint. One or more military checkpoints. In the West Bank, there are 900 checkpoints. And they really divide the West Bank. We'll talk a little later on this traveling. If a person intends to travel in Palestine, that this is really, really difficult, even for the locals in that regard. So you cannot say, oh, let me go and visit this friend in Nablus area, and I'll be back for Dhuhr prayer or Asr prayer. Forget it. You can go to Nablus and you spend a day and even that night, and you cannot get back. But that's a separate issue. We'll say a few words about it later on. Now, is it easy to get through the airport and the bridge? Okay, for US citizens, I did not hear in the last 2-3 years, and I go there twice a year in Ramadan and in the summer, of anyone who is a US citizen that was returned from the bridge or returned from the airport. I did not hear of anyone. However, the Muslims coming from, especially England, a good number of them were returned this year on the same flight. A good number were returned on the same flight. We went 6 of us on 4 separate trips. I went by myself, Brother Atiq, Maulana Atiq and his brother by themselves, my son-in-law Mahmoud and his brother by themselves, and Brother Nasheed, son of Brother Muazzam Hussein, he went by himself. None of us were asked to present their phones. However, the people who came from Britain, they were asked to present and give their phones to the authority. So it happened that the Brother Nasheed, when he came, he did not really go for itikaf. He went with a group in Britain for a program that lasts 10 days. So part of it, they do make Salat al-Taraweeh in Al-Masjid AlAqsa a few days, but they do go and visit Hebron, they do go and visit Beit Laham and other areas. So they do arrange for them tours and food and so on and so forth. He's told me, in fact, I asked him to join me here, but he said he's working tonight. He sent me along some of the things that I'm going to mention is from his post. He said when they arrived, they asked, he was the only US citizen in the group because the bulk of them are British citizens. He said, few minutes, they gave me the visa, I went out. But he said, I ended up waiting 8 hours for the same people that I came with on the same plane. 8 hours he was waiting for them so they can go together. Of course, the lesson there is that an American citizen should make arrangement with the person, give me a choice of going on my own. 8 hours, by that time you can be in Masjid Al-Aqsa praying 2 or 3 prayers, depends on when you arrive. He said part of it is that they took their cell phones and they start, interrogating some of them, and they ended up, he told me, putting some of them back on the same plane that they came. Basically, you are not allowed to enter. I also met some people this year who came through the bridge, young British Muslims, and they said that 4 of us came, intending to go Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and then to go to Umrah. 2 of us were returned from the bridge. They were basically told them, you are anti-Semitic, you are not allowed to end. So you need to realize the visiting Palestine is not just going to a typical country, because they have full authority to reject you. Now, if you don't have any relatives there, there's not much that you can say, oh, I want to stay at the airport and I want to talk to a lawyer. You can do this. But the lawyer will go to the court and ask them to give you permission. If you do not have a basis for that, most likely they will say, oh, he's danger to the country, and they will not let you in. But if you have, let's say, a husband have his wife who have a Hawiyya, a residency, you can say, I want to stay in the airport and call a lawyer, and he goes and said, his wife is there. Or if somebody going for a wedding or for a funeral, you can stay and say, I want to, and most of these cases, the court will overrule them. Unless, there's somebody who has really have been involved in some serious stuff, usually and if somebody is involved in some serious stuff, he will not go to the airport to start with, right? He would not try to go in there. So the court would overrule and get you to enter. And many cases happen in the past. I'm not talking about the last 3 years. The last 3 years, I'm not aware of any single story. But before that, you would hear. Now, why they would block somebody who have relatives there in this regard? Because at one point, they overstay their visa. If you overstay your visa, you come back, they will ask you, go back. You already overstayed your visa before. And they would love it when somebody does it because you cannot come and visit. Now, this person, if they're going to go to the court, I mean, there's very little chance that they will allow, except, as I said, if he's saying, I'm attending my son's wedding or my daughter's wedding or I'm attending a funeral, the court may give him, a permission to go there for a week or two and then leave. So that's basically for those who have connection, relatives in the West Bank. I'm not talking about Gaza. Gaza is totally different story at this point. If you go to the bridge, they will same thing, interrogate, and if you are allowed to go in, you basically need to take a taxi that have a yellow plate. A yellow plate taxi can go anywhere. A yellow car with a yellow tag, I'm talking about the plate, not the color of the car. So if the plate have yellow, it can go any place in Palestine. Now, of course, except Gaza. If it's not the yellow, you only can go to the Palestinian Authority places. So you might come to somebody and say, oh, I'm going to just take you for $20 and drop you there, or $30 and drop you there. Check the plate color. Because if it's not yellow, he will drop you somewhere and you still want or need to find the transportation to cross the military checkpoint. Those guys cannot go through the military checkpoints. And I think Maulana Atiq mentioned during the Friday that one of the things that really stunned him is this man in Bethlehem, who's a taxi driver. He's like in his late 20s and early 30s. And when we told him, oh, we just did the i'tikaf al-Masjid AlAqsa, and that's why we are here to visit the Church of Nativity, and then we're going to Al-Khalil, Hebron. He took us. He said, do you know, brothers, that I never been to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa? Because for you to visit Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, and if you are a Palestinian, you need to be above 55 years old and get a permission. And they give very few, permissions each Friday. And sometimes they give zero. They give zero. Now, if you happen to be a Palestinian and have an American passport and have a residency, Hawiyya, then as of July 2 years ago, the system has been changed. Initially, they would not allow you to go and visit Al-Quds and other places, but the U.S. gave them a visa waiver. So any person who carry a passport, an Israeli passport, regardless if they are Arabs, Muslims, or Christians, or if they are Jews, they can come to the U.S. without a visa. For this to happen, the Biden administration made it a condition on them that they allow the Palestinians who have residency, Hawiyya, who have U.S. citizen, to get a visa for 3 months. It's renewed for another 3 months each year, twice. You can go anywhere in Palestine, except, of course, for Gaza. This was not the case before. To understand, I once went, my youngest son was 12 years old, Ubaid. We arrived at the military checkpoint. He said, you can go in, but he have to go back home. I said, he's 12-year-old. He said, that's it. You go in, or both of you go out back. So I told him, go back and take a taxi and go home and do Salat al-Jum'ah in our hometown. So imagine that, 2.3 million people in the West Bank, they cannot go there. But if you carry a US passport in this regard and have a Hawiyya at that time, that's the condition because he was born here, but he has a Hawiyya, he have a residency. Now, on a typical, day during Ramadan, 6, sometimes 8 people from my own hometown who have a residency, young, men and middle age, they come and, do Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Taraweeh, and then they go back. Which means that this trip can take an hour or an hour and a half because there's a military check. They have to go cross military checkpoint. But the reason why they can make it because they do have a US passport. So if you happen to go there and you have a friend in there and said, I like, to see you, meet you, and he said, no, I cannot. Well, understand that this is because it's beyond their capability in this regard. Now, you have passed through the bridge, got through the car with the yellow plate, or came through the airport and made it to the old city. What you need to realize in terms of logistics, there are not really very good hotels owned by Arabs, meaning Christians and Jews and Muslims. The 2 hotels that are in good standard in the old city is Al-Hashimi and Salah ad-Din Boutique. They are expensive. I mean, Al-Hashimi runs $400 a night in this regard. Sometimes if the season is off and there's not many visitors, I mean, the South Africans love this place, so they usually reserve it. Rarely you find a reservation. The people in Palestine, when they go and get a chance to sleep, there is a motel that runs for $15. But it's, you can imagine. So this brother, he's from Algeria. He lives in Spain. And he said, brother, don't recommend it to anybody. I mean, he goes there every year because basically, as I said, $15 a night. He said, there are 20 people in the same place. And, no privacy. Everything is shared and this and that. But it's there. I mean, in this regard. Al-Hashimi and Salah ad-Din Boutique are owned by Muslims, and they are inside the city. Outside the old city, there are quite few hotels, but again, it's, 3 stars and below. Some of them are even there's not the half a star, or as Brother Labid used to say, 0 star for, to go to Muzdalifah, he used to call it 0 star. Some of those hotels are close to 0 stars, the one that I mentioned, for $10, $15 a night, depends on the season. So you better make reservation ahead of time. They will ask you for your passport, for your visa. Usually they give you a visa for 3 months, and then you either renew it for another 3 months or leave the country. An average hotel there would cost around $60, $70 a night in this regard. Some of the hotels that are better, they may run into $100, $130, $140 a night. The main challenge that Muslims from Palestine and from Europe and the US face is to go and get into Al-Masjid AlAqsa area. We talked earlier that there are gates for the old city of Jerusalem. So there's this Damascus gate, there's the Hebron gate, there is the Bab al-Asbat gate, that is called the Lions gate, there is, Rahma gate, which is next to the 2 cemeteries, the cemetery of Al-Rahma and the cemetery of Al-Yusufiyya. So those are gates of the old city. But now there are gates of the area that's called Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. We are not talking about the doors of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. That's another issue. The doors of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa are in the hands of the Awqaf, the Muslim Awqaf, although the Yahud have control over close and open. So we are talking about the gates to the area that's called Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, which is the 750 meters by 350, 400 meters, depends on the width. Those gates open an hour before Fajr prayer, or I should say before Fajr Adhan, I'm sorry. They open 1 hour before Fajr Adhan, they close 1 hour after the end of Salat al-Isha. So the Masjid al-Aqsa is open from an hour before Fajr prayer, Fajr Adhan, until an hour after Isha, and then the Yahud will close it. Nobody can be there. I mean, they will remove you forcefully if needed. And the Awqaf, they do not have a say in this. On each gate, you will find usually a military police, 1 or 2, and an army person with machine guns, 1 or 2. So, we are talking about well-armed people at each gate. Now, also at each gate, from inside, there is a staff from the Awqaf. But they have not much authority. Why they are there? They are there to check on those who are coming, to be sure that they are Muslims in the times that it's allowed only for Muslims. So Nasheed, in fact, he wrote me, he said, I had in one point entered and the Muslim stopped. He did have some issues with the Zionists at the gates, armed, and he said at one point they kicked me out and I had to go and look for another gate to enter. So that's typical. You do not argue with them, and they may use foul language, because basically you could easily be accused of pushing or having a conflict with that. Your aim is to go there and make Salah at Al-Masjid AlAqsa and enter. And they do not like to see Muslims coming. That's part of it, and that's where the reward is. Because this is موطن يغيظ الكفار. You are in a position that the kuffar do not like to see you there for your deen. And that's part of the ajr, and that's part of, as I said initially, encourage people to go to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Now, Nasheed, he said that the Muslim asked him, recite Al-Fatiha, and so he said, I recited Al-Fatiha and some part of Surah Al-Baqarah. He said, okay, enter. So that's typically, at one point in the old days, I used to have a much longer beard, and they were thinking I was a settler. So the guy told me, stopped me, he said, are you a Muslim? I said, Assalamu alaikum. He said, can you recite Al-Fatiha? So I recited Yasin for him. He started laughing, and of course, we did not have an issue after that. But that's the only task that they have, and also for women that they are covered, because in the masjid in this regard. But they do not have much authority. They cannot let you in. Absolutely no authority in this regard. There are about 10 different doors or gates for the area of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. If you were asked to leave, you are not allowed to come. Don't argue with them. Go to another gate. I mean, as I mentioned on Friday, for the first time ever, I was not allowed to go through 5 gates. Usually, 1 gate or 2, but this time, after they resumed the war on Gaza, 5 gates, myself and Maulana Atiq went through, and each one we are told, go away. Rawah, go home. I mean, they would shout in Arabic, Rawah, Rawah, go home. So we are from the US, go back. Sometimes go back to America, and they may even curse after that. So the 6th gate, I got through it. In this regard, he did not even open the passport in the 6th gate. He said, how old are you? I said, I added a few months. I said, I'm 66. He said, okay, go in. So Atiq followed me. He said, no, you go back, you go away. So he allowed me. Atiq was not allowed. So I told Atiq, just continue the tour till he went, and the last gate, alhamdulillah, he got in without even them asking. So it's not that they have a very uniform policy that applies at every door. It depends who is at the door. There are some of them who do not care, and there are some of them who are ultra-Zionist. They really do not like to see, especially young people. Especially young people. I mean, you come, let's say Bab al-Silsila is one of the doors. It's the first door that's open for Fajr. Typically, there will be about 60, 70 people waiting behind the door that they will enter when the door opens for, before Fajr. So you get those people, are army people, 2 or 3, they come and says, you, 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 go on the side. So if you look younger, 20s, 30s, teens, go on the side. If you are older, they will let you. And then they go, interrogate them and this and that. Best not to carry something with you because they will stop you anyway. Another tip is that when you go there, don't look them in the eye. Just to proceed as if there's nothing, as if there's nobody is waiting. Most of the time it works. But sometimes they go, oh, come back, come back, come back, in this regard. So ignoring the situation, most of the time it works in this regard. I remember once, but this was not even at the gate. Once they had a military presence in Bab al-Amud, which is 10 minutes before even you get to Al-Masjid AlAqsa. 10 minutes in this regard. So it was myself and my own brother trying to enter. So he told my brother, go in. This was like 15 years ago. And he told me, go back. I said, look, this is my younger brother. I am his older brother. He said, show me the passports. So when he found that I am indeed older than him, he told me, go in. Some brothers told me you should not do it because they may just tell him, go back with your brother. But alhamdulillah, it did not go, So the checkpoints sometimes not necessarily, inside the gates. It could be in that. For the sake of time, inshallah, I need to answer a question that usually being asked. Is it safe to go and visit Palestine and Almasjid AlAqsa? And if I go, do I also safe to go around and visit other parts of Palestine like Bethlehem and Hebron al-Khalil? Because al-Khalil, the masjid there, which was built during the time of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi radiallahu anh, Sayyidina Ibrahim bought that land. And that was the first structure. So Sayyidina Ibrahim, his wife, his Ishaq, his son, his grandson Yaqub alayhi salam, and their wives, Sarah, all of them are there. Their graves are in that place. And there's a basement that's called the Cave of the Patriarch that have many of the prophets buried there. So many Muslims would like to make the visit there. So I would say, is it safe to go? Yes and no. You might go spend 2 months and see nothing. But you might go one day and bullets are flying all over the place. As an example, last August, I took my wife and my daughter-in-law and my grandchildren to visit Hebron, Khalil. So we went there, we came back to our hometown, going through the military checkpoints, we did not have an issue. The second day, somebody put a bomb between Hebron and Bethlehem and they closed the city. So if you are going to visit Hebron and they close the city, you are stuck there for a day or for 2, you do not know. So, going between the cities is definitely very delicate, and you need to be up to date. Now, the locals, they have their own channels, they have their own ways to know what's going on around. So best for you is to connect with someone local who can advise you on these things. Again, inshallah, for anyone who is planning a visit, this will serve as a basis for you to have, the general information, but we will be more than happy. The brothers who made it there, they are quiet. I know in this town there are tens of brothers and families who already went there. I'm not talking about Palestinians. I'm talking about people from all background. So you can ask one of them, and inshallah I'll be more than happy myself if somebody is intended to go to talk to me at least a week before, so we can apply for this ETA and take it from there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa from the Zionists and their allies. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and its surrounding. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the khair and the barakah and make for us a visit to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa when it was under and become inshallah under Muslim rule. Allahumma ameen. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Next week inshallah we'll have the issue of challenges facing the Muslims in the new America.